So, where does the amphora come from?
That came from Greece. You know, they used amphora to cart wine and fish oil and fish paste and things around the world. And this is one that I bought in Athens, where we went to live in, I can't remember the date now. We lived in the sort of one of the nearer suburbs of Athens called Psychiko. And our house was on a road called Odos Viranos Enea. That's number 9 Byron Road. And the suburb was called Psychiko. And I found this in one of the sort of junk areas, the sort of flea markets. And I didn't think I would be allowed to export it. But as it isn't incredibly ancient, but is a very ancient shape, and I loved it and I wanted to have something to remember Greece by. We bought it, and here it is, and here it will stay.
How old do you think it is?
How old do I think it is?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought more than 100, 200 years. The really old ones, of course, go back, you know, into before BC. But it's got a lovely lot of moss on it now.
And what was it like in Greece?
Well, it was
compared with other postings?
It was very short, unfortunately. Dad will tell you that we were moved. They wanted to move us from Greece after only 8 months because Murray MacLehose, the governor of Hong Kong, was wanting Alan to come out as a Chinese speaker. And he didn't want to go because he felt that if we left a post after 8 months, there would be sure to be scandalous stories that something had gone wrong, which wasn't so at all. But we only made 2 years, 2.5 at the most, which was not nearly long enough for me because I really discovered archaeology there. It was very busy, very busy. Alan was Alan was a commercial counsellor, and our ambassador was somebody called Robin Hooper, whom we'd met before and was an awfully nice man. Most of the boys were at school in England and only came out at holidays, but we did have Alexander with us as a very young boy. And I enjoyed it enormously. Every weekend, when Dad came back from the office, exhausted, and I had a gin and tonic ready for him and the entire car packed with our trailer, with a tent and bedding and things for camping, and we shot out of Athens, which was a pretty sort of crowded and polluted place. And we would just drive for an hour and a half, 2 hours or something, into somewhere completely different. And then, as the weather was almost always nice, we would find a vineyard or an orchard or something and unpack the trailer, put out our sleeping bags and sleep under the stars. And then the next morning, on the Saturday, when we were miles away from Athens, we could go really wherever we liked. And we explored a lot of the mainland of Athens in that way, and of Greece in that way. And it was just great. I loved it.
And Alex was with you most of that time? Or?
Alex was too.
Camping?
Yes, he was great. I've got a wonderful photograph of him somewhere on a potty on the shore of one of of Andros, I think it was. There were masses of islands which we could visit, and we had great fun visiting those. And we used to take him camping with us. And there was always a potty for him, 2-year-old. And I've got a lovely scene of him just sitting there on the shore with the waves lapping and our tents behind and things. But the weather was sometimes, well, almost always so good that we didn't actually need to use the tent except for shade. We didn't need it to protect us, you know, from cold or rain or anything.
And you were there at the time with the colonels. Was that
Correct.
difficult, or was it strange, having basically some fascists in charge of...
Well, our impression was we hadn't really known Greece at all before, either before or after the colonels, was that Greece functioned extremely efficiently. It was...
Just wait for the plane. Sorry. Otherwise, it's very difficult to cut when suddenly there's a loud plane noise and then not, and then, you know, so So back, yes, with the colonels.
The colonels, well, Dad will tell you that actually it made for a much more efficient and actually much easier way of life, because there weren't the sort of riots or the deadlocks between people arguing fiercely their different viewpoints about certain things. And the only time, the story about Dad, when we were there, our ambassador, Robin Hooper, was away, and the number 2 in the embassy was also away. And so Alan was then at the number 3 level, was then, as it were, in charge of the embassy, when there was a visit by somebody called Spyrus Agnew, who was the vice president of the States, who came over to visit. So we had to represent, there was a cocktail party and things to welcome him, and all the diplomatic corps was there, and a lot of other people, and we went to represent the British Embassy. And so in his turn, Alan went up to shake hands and to welcome Spyro Agnew to Greece. And I was just watching from the sidelines. And I saw that he walked straight past a row of other officials and things, one of which, a small man, sort of hesitated and stepped out with his hand half out, and then stepped back, while Alan shook hands warmly with this very tall Spyro Agnew, a giant of a man, and conveyed the apologies that the ambassador was not there, but welcomed him on behalf of the British Embassy, and then he walked away and came back eventually to where I was. So I said to him, "Who's the little man just standing beside Spyro Agnew who wanted to shake your hand?" He walked just straight past him, and he had a look, and he said, "Oh my God, that was the President of Greece. He was the senior colonel of the 5. And he'd completely forgotten that he should not only welcome the ambassador, the chap from America, but also shake hands with and introduce himself to the President of Greece." Anyway, we expected to be booted out as persona non grata any minute, but actually was us to have been forgiven in the high echelons of state.